Cool. Thank you, Max. Awesome. Yeah, I detected a little bit of cynicism and criticism of government in your tone. I share all of those.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I mean, there was a time when I didn't vote for a while. I've been a voter for pretty regular now, but yeah, I still remember all the reasons, why I used to not vote. And it was like, it was when I was younger. I was, kind of transitioning from high school to college and then just trying to find a job. And I was just so focused on, my life kind of getting it started. I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to put a lot of time and effort into researching, politicians and I was a survivor of sorts, right? I was like, got to find a job, got to find a place to live, got to find a car, and it didn't really matter who was elected because I'm like, hey, I'm still going to be paying taxes and got to find that job. And, it really didn't seem like whoever was elected was really affecting me directly. And then as I got more settled in, then I started seeing, more problems of the world. And I'm like, okay. Then I started, as after I got some of my basic needs met, um, then I started looking outward and looking at other people who may not have the same advantages that I did as a straight white male privileged person. I started learning that that was, so anyway, I could focus on other people and then, start voting because that, but great presentation. Yeah, this was good material, Max, for sure. People who have questions and comments, we can kind of open it up in a couple of different ways. Probably raise the hand is the most democratic, equitable way to get people to, and start with the questions first. Some people like to, talk about a lot of stuff, but let's hit Max with questions first, and then maybe save comments for after all the questions that are asked. And I had a couple questions myself, Max, but I think you actually answered them during your presentation. I'm sure I'll come up with a couple more. But yeah, use that raise the hand feature, and we can unmute people, and or you can put some stuff in the chat. Anybody have
Okay.
any
Sounds good.
questions? Yeah. Thanks again, Max. This was a great presentation. Questions for Max? Anybody? Oh, come on, everybody's being shy. Well, let me. I mean, one question that I did have while
Oops.
people are thinking was, you mentioned, yeah, you really covered the issue of, how many people to be on the assembly, how often would they rotate, how do you get that diverse sampling? And was it just like basically the law of averages? But I think it kind of would work out that way, right? You have a random sampling. Certain people are going to not, um, some people are going to deny, so they're going to not agree to do the assembly. So yeah, there's probably that perfect balance where you just have to get that right number of people and maybe somehow make sure there's at least a minimum level of diversity, but then everything else will be random. So you kind of answered that already, but some people might still have some
Yeah.
objections there.
Yeah, like one little niggling point is definitely like if you really want to represent all voices, and there's some people who are sort of against this and won't participate, but you still want to represent them. It's kind of a funny small issue.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
should I just, Ian Trosser has raised his hand. Shall I?
yeah. Go for it. Yeah. Feel free to help
Okay.
us out as well. Yep. Go ahead and unmute Ian.
Great talk, Max. I really enjoyed it. So as far as mandatory versus non-mandatory participation, so as a land value tax enthusiast, someone who's clear, you have footage evidence of you being at a planning and zoning commission, you know that the voluntary people that show up are more likely to be NIMBYs and whatnot. How do you address that problem with only voluntarily having people on the, only having volunteers? Isn't that going to get the people who are most interested in the process or the most free time on their hands or some combination of both?
Right. Right. That is a very good question. The most proposals, they really believe that participation should be compensated. So that hopefully is a partial motivation. And then the idea of having them scheduled on weekends seems like that would be maximally accessible to also help with that kind of concern. However, of course, you're gonna have people who work weekends, and that makes it tough on them. A lot of proposals include the offer of childcare to make that burden easier. But you know, as long as it's optional, there will be some amount of self-selection, and there is a hope that there will become a cultural association of honor with serving and dispatching the civic duty. There is evidence from exit interviews of participants from these civic assemblies of people feeling a much greater civic responsibility, feeling a sense of control and power in their life. And it's, I would argue that that's not, that they genuinely are feeling a power over their own life because they have a power over their own life.
I think that's a good answer. I think the only other thing that I would add, just because I kind of, gave you this sort of gotcha type question, is there are some proposals that recommend mandatory service, at least for some parts of these
Okay.
assemblies, like Terry Burgess's proposal. They would have like the panel that's doing like the deep dive research and crafting the proposal. That's all voluntary, huge time commitment. But then like have
Hmm.
basically a super large jury come in, review the proposal that this other group has made, and say thumbs up or thumbs down. And that might just be like a single weekend or a couple days of service, more like a criminal trial. And that sort of short-term service might be mandatory in some formulations of this proposal. But yeah, great talk.
Yeah. Yeah. See, this is an example right now of distributed wisdom. I gave this talk, but Ian, who just spoke, Alex, Paul in the chat, they all could give as good or better talks on this exact subject, and that, like, we're just regular people who spent, I don't know, a bit of our free time learning about this. I think it's wonderful.
Very cool. Thanks for the question, Ian. And before I go to Alex, yeah, I think it's as we start small with civic assemblies, there might be like that voluntary aspect. A lot of people don't like to be told what to do, and think of jury duty as a great example. And you made a lot of references to that. People often try to get out of jury duty because it's this obligation thing. But I've done it. I've done it twice now, and actually, I enjoyed it both times. It was just a nice break from work. It was interesting to compare and contrast what happens in the courtroom and what happens on TV. There's actually a lot of similarities and overlaps. Obviously, it's slightly less dramatic, but we had some really quirky things happen in the courtroom that was almost representative of something dramatic on TV. So if you start off with maybe some voluntary and then maybe see how it goes and then transition into some mandatory, but with major exceptions. I mean, they had a lot of, we went through the jury selection process. It took
Hmm.
almost a day and a half just because everybody on vacation and childcare and transportation and all that. So then you can also talk about that compensation piece. I got compensated for being there, but it was a small amount. But maybe coupling that with people maybe heard of minimum basic income as we continue to
For sure.
advance with AI as well as automation, as jobs slowly start getting maybe reduced or replaced with robots and automation. There might have to be some minimum basic income that could be incorporated within these civic assemblies to make decisions. So yeah, there's a lot of possibility, and I think those level of details are kind of like on the fringe, in my opinion. They should all just be like, hey, let's try it, let's get the best benefit, and then
Yes.
work through the hassles and the details as they come. So yeah, thanks. Great
Yes.
question, Ian, and good response, Max. Alex, go for it.
That was a good segue for what I was going to say. So first of all, Max, thank you so much for doing this presentation and also like the personal touches you added to it because it makes it much more real of like why this even matters and like what the impact is on us personally, which I loved hearing about. And I just wanted to say like both in terms of Ian's question and Rhett, what you were just talking about, the reality is that civic assemblies, they've been used a lot in Europe and they've been used around the world. I put that link in. But there's variations. It's still kind of a model that's being worked on and adjusted. And some people, I put in the chat that the site I shared, I would say some of them are more loosely civic assemblies, while some are far more like rigorous in terms of what methodology it follows. But it's the same general process. And usually it's part of the criteria is like the stipends and sortition. And there's like some key components. But anyway, I'm just saying that for this group in particular, that like that is part of why I think we like doing these presentations and meeting with different people, is because like we wanted to work in LA, OC, California, and like we're just kind of trying to figure out the best way of getting that buy-in and helping people see all the different avenues that are available for what this could look like. Max mentioned the model assemblies, and that's part of why we're doing these like mini model assemblies to kind of show people what it could look like for different issues that are of importance. But anyway, that like hopefully this like really, I think Max, you did a really good job of kind of planting the seeds in terms of like the different ways that this could look and why it matters. And yeah, so thanks for doing this and thanks for inviting us, Rod.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the statistics that you brought up that you were suspicious about a bit, because you're a little bit suspicious with surveys and results, as am I. But you had a lot of anecdotal examples of just, hey, it kind of fits what you've been seeing. And Jeremy and I have been leading discussion groups for many years now, and I think we would agree with all those too. Like a lot of the feedback that we get from people who participate in our groups would certainly model that, suspicion over government, not trusting the government. I think we're probably at an all-time high of being suspicious of government, red, blue, across the board. And I don't know for sure. I would have to hear from some conservative representation, but maybe that's why Donald Trump did rise to the top, because he wasn't your standard politician. Like were the conservatives, fed up with their own red candidates, that they wanted just somebody who maybe took charge a little bit more and actually got something done, kind of cut through some of the bureaucracy. That's we've had those discussions in our groups as well, and that seemed to be kind of the conclusion, that people were just looking for any kind of a change. Some of us on the blue side might think that that was a change for the worse, but at least it's a change. It's some kind of a difference. So yeah, definitely some food for thought there. Jeremy, go for it.
Well, thanks, Brett, and thanks, Max, for your presentation. I have one of those weird, convoluted questions as well. As a social psychologist, I kind of pick these things apart from that very, very perspective of how do people psychosocially respond. And you kind of hit on Maslow's hierarchy when you said people don't have the time to research these things. Most people have been forced, literally forced by this system, because you even brought it up, the founders of this country, well, rich white male landowners. Most people have to work 2 or 3 jobs. They don't have the time. They're barely, able to do hand to mouth. And so what I look at in that whole thing is, you know, the average person who wants to commit time and energy but doesn't really have that energy and time, and then we juxtaposition that based on the very, very political people who are in charge of our country. Because one of the things you brought up, back in the 1960s and 70s, we actually had government that compromised. We actually had people who worked for the betterment of society and thought, what can we do to make this work? This has become such a competition and such everything surrounding greed and power, that one of the big question I have for you is, even at the civic assembly level, how do we ferret out the piece of human nature where there are people, there are entities that are always going to want power and control over others disproportionately? And that's something that we've been watching for thousands of years. And so that equation, that piece, is what always makes me wonder. And I'm not trying to be negative or cynical. I'm just wondering, how do we as a humanity get past that point and really learn to cooperate with each other on that civic assembly platform and really do the benefit for all of us? Because Red even brought it up, universal basic income. One of the big concerns I have with that is human beings need to feel productive. And if we're not doing anything, if we're just sitting around all day, just collecting money and watching television, we're going to see some huge problems, because human beings need to feel productive. And that's why when you bring up civic assembly, I'm like, how can we implement this, get past some of the human nature, built in, flaws in our own structure of humanity, and make this work?
Okay. Yeah, those are salient issues. And one of the struggles we've had with our model civic assemblies is actually getting people from both sides of the aisle to come so that we can sort of test our own deliberative methods. I would say there's a couple sort of competing ideas, and Terry Barish's blog sort of about these very concerns of in these civic assemblies, would you have a thought leader or someone very charismatic and persuasive dominating discussion for ill, or just maybe not intentionally for ill, but they're confused or derailing things. That is a concern. Terry suggests in his multi-body formation, which I touched on a little bit. Ian mentioned some of these things, that you would have deep dive sortition bodies, civic assemblies, where they're really doing a more research-based thing, and then they present that to a secondary body that's simply with less contact between the members. They're simply evaluating. They're paid to sit there and listen to several presentations with maybe a week or two between them, where they can talk to friends and family, do their own research, and then vote. And so that kind of assembly would have less vulnerability to such I don't know, such behaviors. Um, However, it it is sort of unclear if this system could really be hijacked. We really, we have a large body of evidence from juries that juries mostly we consider just and fair, but we also have juries that we clearly think did wrong. So there is talk in the sortition community of civic assemblies sometimes deciding a previous civic assembly was flawed. And I mentioned this, just one brief line in my talk about, there's this hope that this is a self-repairing mechanism, but we've never tested that or seen it. So I'm optimistic. I am hopeful, and there's a part of me that just wants to say, well, we can't do any worse. So that's sort of my best answer for you there. If we had Alex or Ian or Paul wanted to say anything to that, they definitely could, but we could also go to, or if you want to follow up, but also we can go to Mr. Fatchko if that's my answer.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so
feel
much,
free to
Max,
elaborate.
and
Oh yeah, go ahead.
go on to Denise. Give her a chance.
Yeah. If
Oh,
anybody else
sorry.
wants to, if anybody else wants to follow up with, comments or questions on any previous question or comment, yeah, feel free to as well. But yeah, Denise, go ahead, go for it.
How would you get something like this off the ground, say in Orange County, and would it work alongside our current system now?
Yeah, so there are I don't know what stage they're at. Maybe Alex would know. In Culver City, we are currently talking to city council members about actually having an official civic assembly. That was organized through people in my organization that have lived in Culver City. We have a professor of Culver from UCLA. She's been there for 40 years, and I think she had contact with them. They attended our model civic assembly yesterday in Culver, which Alex was our facilitator at, and I think we haven't done a debrief, so I don't know, but hopefully we're going ahead with that. In Orange County, I hope you could do something similar. I I don't know, Alex and Ian might know how civic assemblies got off the ground in Europe. I know that there's the big one in Brussels, the G1000, which was, their government. They were in gridlock for a few years, and then there was a grassroots movement to try this idea. How did they know about this idea? I'm not sure. Let's see I bet Ian would have a great answer.
Yeah, go
can
for it. Go for it, Ian.
This addresses some of what Jeremy was asking and also some of what Denise was asking. I think in general, civic assemblies thus far have been created to address, basically at the will of politicians, to address a political problem that they're facing. For example, the Yellow Vest movement in France was a sort of like reaction from the working class against the climate policies of the French government. You know, the Macron was in crisis, needed some way to give like public legitimacy to what they were going to do for the climate, and then convened this Citizens Climate Assembly, right? Same thing for Ireland. You know, their constitution excluded any form of abortion, and so that was causing problems as far as like women's lives being put at risk, or cases of rape or incest that, you know, may have had, they could not get an abortion, could not get reasonable access to medical care, right? So it's this political crisis that, like, for example, in Ireland, because of the influence of the Catholic Church, it's really hard for any politician to say, hey, we need some reasonable access to abortion, or we need some, you know, we need some reasonable access for, you know, working people to avoid this carbon tax or whatever. And then the politicians are employing a civic assembly to sort of like wash their hands of the issue and say, hey, you guys decide. But that's a separate question of how do we actually circumvent politicians and give the real power to these processes rather than politicians themselves. What about the issues that the politicians don't want to give up that really are critical to give up, like political corruption and campaign finance, and that is a stickier ball of wax, but it's one that might take longer to explain possible strategies. But groups like Democracy Without Elections and PDLA and Assemble America are working on those strategies, and one of them is this constitutional convention idea that was mentioned earlier.
Very cool. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, to me, it's like I put a question in the chat. There's some good stuff, other stuff coming in the chat too. So make sure you save the chat before you have to leave. So how did was anybody aware of the LA wildfire civic assembly that I heard was happening? I thought it already happened. Did that already happen? Did anybody attend, and any feedback from that?
Yes, we did our model civic assembly yesterday.
Well, that was
and
that. Well, that was about
that
that
was
topic.
that. We were addressing that, but it had no actual political authority. And I guess I would offer that as a path for something to actually come about, is figuring out what is a pressing topic in your community that maybe politicians would be open to delegating responsibility, or open at least to input. I mean, you know, I shared that image when I went to Los Alamitos City Council. You know, I've done that twice, that's all. And it seems like, you know, these community inputs are very tense and inefficient. And if you're simply, if they and it also seems like they don't always genuinely want the community's input, but were they to genuinely want the community's input on a topic, and you knew of one in Orange County, you might find that as a good vector to spread civic assemblies.
That's a great idea.
And
yeah, I think
I'll just say this out
go ahead,
loud.
Aaron.
Alex mentioned, sorry, Alex mentioned in the chat. Yes, our organization would be open to running a model civic assembly to demonstrate this to any city council members or electeds, if or just to the community. I mean, I'm a little more aggressive about, you know, I'm ready for civic assemblies to have real power. And I'm compromising, you know, I'm being flexible and being like, yeah, let's do the intermediary solution of simply giving a policy recommendation, because I think that can, you know, ultimately I do think that the politicians themselves are members of the community and can be persuaded that, you know, maybe we can have a better, happier environment where they're not, I mean, they're worried about job security. A lot of politicians are focused on their career and are in a tough spot. I've advocated for the land value tax with that group, and I've tried to speak to all of these state senators on the floor of the National Convention of State Legislators last summer in Louisville, and you know, I was a little bit sympathetic to them because they were like, you know, they're just like shopping for how to pad their resume for their next, you know, application for a job, i.e., running for office. I wasn't that sympathetic though. It was a very, very well catered event.
Yeah, yeah. And before we have Ian come on, I think these are all great ideas. I think it might have to start, more just as advisory, and then it might eventually move into more like, policy decision making. And I think
Yes.
politicians who really need help and want to really represent the people are going to be more on board. And I think I asked this question during Alex's presentation a while ago. Um, the people who tend to lose are going to be the ones who feel like and want that more power and control. They're going to be the ones that are going to be more resistant. But because the power of the people can speak, and if you think about, like, there are already clubs, influencing clubs, like there are Democratic clubs and Republican clubs, and there's climate change, groups and organizations, and all these could simply start to morph into civic assemblies of sorts to say, hey, we've got a bunch of people who are concerned about, let's say, climate. I mean, and there's even one called Citizens Climate Lobby, almost
Mm.
has that word civic, embedded in it. Yeah, they can say, hey, you know what, we are representing this particular topic. They could almost, form in. Now, these are obviously going to already be volunteers. They're not going to be, randomly selected, but, things like that could eventually morph into some kind of a randomly selected, pool of people. And then as it gets momentum, then, it might eventually take over where it becomes, instead of just advisory, it becomes,
Mm-hmm.
so again, small steps, but I think we're, certainly moving in the right direction. You got to start somewhere, or otherwise nothing's going to happen. Ian, go ahead.
Well, maybe
Or go
nothing
ahead,
happens,
Scott.
but maybe things maybe things get even worse, or will the American government last forever? I don't think so. So be ready. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah.
I just wanted to address a thing that Alex brought up in the chat, as far as just like getting as many of these processes running is a really good way to advocate for civic assemblies and sortition, because probably the movement's biggest weakness is that no one knows what sortition is, or no one has heard about these things. So the more people that hear about it and say, oh, actually, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, elections are kind of aristocratic. I can't run to be a senator. I don't have the money or the free time. I can't pause my working and caregiving responsibilities to take the risk of running. That's not democracy. This sounds like it might be. Maybe this is like the one reform that makes all other worthwhile reforms more possible. And then we get the land value tax, and all our problems are solved.
Nice. I love it, Ian. I love it. That's a great comment. Paul, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute still, Paul.
You're
Go ahead and
muted,
unmute
Paul.
yourself.
Oh,
We
okay.
got him.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, yeah. Yeah. Since I haven't spoken before, yeah. Thanks again for the great talk, Max. And yeah, I love that you brought up the idea of adding election by jury as a ballot option, because I really do think that's a potential sort of intervention that's a very achievable goal. I mean, a lot of states in the United States have the ability to amend the state constitution by referendum that completely bypasses the state legislature. I think my camera's smart, whatever. That you like normally, yeah, like these citizens assemblies have all been advisory. It's very hard to get politicians to agree to give them real power. But here in the United States, I think, especially among other countries, it's fairly unique that we have so many states, including large influential states like California, where the citizens, you can petition to get an initiative onto the ballot and pass it and amend the state constitution and change the rules without the legislature being able to stop you. And we have quite a few states where that's an option. So I definitely think that that's a potential avenue where even and once it's implemented, right? Once you start having officials who are in power, who were there because they got selected by a jury, because people voted for elect by jury instead of voting for a candidate's name, then those people are now beholden to the process and become potential allies as well. Because now because there's going to be people who are perhaps people with deeper technical expertise who aren't necessarily good at campaigning, or don't have the fundraising skills or the fundraising ability or the connections, so you open up political office, including high-level political office, to people who are you know, sort of a different different backgrounds, and potentially even those with more experience, like more actual technical expertise in policymaking, rather than people who are simply well connected or good at campaigning. And now these people know that they are their position is also beholden to these juries, and will help to keep that system entrenched, and even spread it potentially. And yeah, this is something that should be explored. This idea of passing this through ballot measure, through referendum.
Yeah. Yeah, and a little plug for the land value tax movement. The referendums in California are largely due to the single tax movement in the early 20th century, from what I have studied.
Very cool. Yeah, I think with any good experiment, you can learn from the good examples. I mean, luckily, this concept has been around a while, like you presented, and we can certainly take examples from things like this that have been done. Learn from the good stuff, exclude the bad stuff. Get some advisors that have done it in some of these other countries, and of course, including here in the United States. And so, just kind of like just like anything, it just has to get has the potential to get better and better. As you continue to refine it and whatnot. So is that LA Fire Civic Assembly going to meet again? I can't imagine one meeting resolving everything. Were they going to meet again as a follow-up of some sort, or propose certain things to people who have the ability to actually make some of those changes? Any idea, Max?
This was simply a demonstration. We ourselves decided what the topic would be that we thought would appeal to the locals. And there's currently no plan for that. I don't know. I mean, if Alex can share details about what the proposed civic assembly would be with the Culver City City Council that they would be on board with. I don't know if those have been finalized. But our meeting yesterday was 3 hours, and we had to, Alex, when she was facilitating, had to explain that this is an expedited, abridged version. Ideally, you would be doing this several consecutive weekends. You would have time to ask friends, family, do your own research, ask for certain experts to come in, and we weren't able to simulate that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Did you want more information about the Culver City? I guess.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah, go for it, Alex. Then we can have Don. Yep.
Yeah, so basically, Culver City has like $250,000 in their budget that they're gonna vote on in terms of how to engage citizens in the budgeting process. This is kind of like, I wouldn't 100% quote me on this, but this is what I've heard. And was talking with them, and they're definitely I was talking with them yesterday, and they're very interested in figuring out how a civic assembly might be useful. Like maybe it is to help plan what the budgeting process might look like, or I don't know, there's a few different angles, I guess. So it won't be just it'll be decided over the next couple months, I guess. So cautiously optimistic, and about this in particular, more optimistic that they really are trying to figure out what a civic assembly would be useful for if it doesn't end up being this. But and it took, as Max is mentioning, it took a lot of advocacy from people within Culver City, from PDLA, especially who it has kind of the bridge between PDLA and Culver City to make this happen. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for the details, Alex. Don, go for it. You're up next.
Well, hi, thanks everyone for having this. I think that getting the average person involved in civic meetings like that is a great idea. It's kind of a populist idea in my mind. It's great to discuss and deliberate among voters, but I think it's got a long, and I'm glad it's getting started, but I think we've got a long ways to go to translate that kind of thing into actual legislation that gets enforced. And my experience, having served on an advisory board in Huntington Beach and then working for 6 years on legislation at the state, is that we have major barriers that once you get going, you'll run up against. I call it corruption and undue influence, but But I found that in some of these hearings that the cities will have, and I've been to a number of them in different cities, is that oftentimes the city council has already made their decision before the hearing. The hearing is more like a dog and pony show. And it's probably due to a lot of backdoor or behind the scenes maneuvering that we, the public, do not get to be privy of. And I think, is it maybe Philadelphia is one of the few cities that actually requires all of their elected officials to publish a timetable of who they're meeting and when. And I was surprised to find that so few cities require that, because the opposition in our case were involved in housing. They have lobbyists that are probably meeting with the city officials long before the public hearing. Of course, there's the campaign contributions, which stand out, but they were also having get-togethers with civic leaders or their staff, which you'll find that civic leaders are often informed best by their staff. And they would have golf outings, luncheons together, training programs that would train the staff on their, what their form of affordable housing was, without our side ever getting to have a training session that was equal. So there is an incredible amount of back end undue influence that you're going to hit up against sooner or later, and we need to have some kind of reform that all meetings need to be public, and we need to end the undue influence and corruption. For instance, on the advisory board I was on, a lot of the stakeholders, the people involved, didn't even know it existed to start out with. So I complained that we needed to have public outreach. And I got the city to actually spend some money to send postcards out informing people that they had a Democratic thing going on that they should be involved in. But up until that point, I doubt if 10% of some of the stakeholders, because it's housing and it turns over quick and people come from other sides. So we finally had an outreach, which was the first time that I'm recording, I'm aware of. The meetings were at 5 p.m., which is anti-worker. 5 p.m., most people are, feeding their feet home in the freeway. So I said, well, why aren't we should record the meetings? And they refused to record the meetings. So even if somebody got home and wanted to find out what happened, they couldn't see it. So, and then the meetings go on for hours. So, you've got a lot of structural things that need to be overcome. And I think you hit it when these civic meetings need to have some kind of legal clout. And until you get that, in fact, in the city of Carson, there's a group of stakeholders that all get together, deliberate, and they have clout when they decide on their affordable housing. It becomes law. And until we get there, I just kind of think we've got to work on these other behind the scenes issues that are going on.
Yeah. Well, that is the reality for sure. Let me tell you a secret. Or maybe I covered this in my talk. Sorry. Yeah. Most, like, every person in PDLA, except maybe Alex, none of us ever woke up one day saying, all I want to do is lead the most beautiful group discussions ever. We all had, most of it, I believe, we all had other causes, climate, taxation. Alex says she did wake up like that. I believe it. She is magnificent in facilitating gently, kindly. I get really antsy. But the rest of us, we all came from housing, climate. I came from tax, and I have only seen a bit of what you're describing. I've been a little bit active with Elizabeth Hansberg's organization, which is People for Housing OC, and I've had chats with her where she's just telling me the gossip on the Fullerton City Council or some council members of Huntington Beach, and it's just like, It's exactly what I've read about on the internet, but in real life, of just local wealthy people, typically corrupt real estate developers, corrupt whomever. Um, and the term corruption is tricky. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have. I'm just corroborating
Let me
what
say
your
one,
experience was.
let me say one more thing. When the organization I worked at was scrapes together enough money to afford a lobbyist, and then fortunately for us, we have a great lobbyist at the Capitol. But you can meet with your local representative. You may even get them to propose a bill, but you better have an attorney that knows the whatever business to write it for you. They'll screw that up. But once you get it to the state capitol, if you don't have a lobbyist, the odds dramatically drop of you getting any legislation passed. And so right off the bat, the average person, unless you join, some group, some organization that has a lobbyist, you don't have much. I hate to say it, but right now, the way things stand, it doesn't look great.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll respond sort of in two ways. One, I think you're totally right. Uh, and I personally have sort of decided my own objective is mostly to share this idea with and annoy my friends and family as much as I can, and to write my blog and to post on Twitter, and I'm going to try to make a YouTube video. I I do not have, like, when all my friends are talking about, oh, let's talk to this senator about this bill, I go to sleep. Um, However, I want to sharing a bit of my own personal life. I was raised, as I mentioned, here in Orange County. I was homeschooled. I was raised very conservative, fundamentalist Christian. And, for most of my life, early life into my teens, I sort of literally believed a lot of people were going to hell. And then I sort of came out of that, and it's like very relieving to not think you're going to hell. And then I sort of associate with a lot of liberal young people, and they're like, "Oh my God, society's horrible. It's going to hell." And I was like, "No, no, you don't understand. Like, you can't, like there is a chance that, our species gets wiped out. Um, but we got rid of bloodline aristocracy. We ended slavery for the most part. I think there's a lot of tyranny still in the world. I think we are to a point in society where there's like no turning back, that everyone believes in the sanctity, maybe not literally everyone, but the vast majority of people believe in the sanctity of human life. And once you have that fundamental idea, uh, I don't know if it'll take 10 or 100 years, and again, a species-wide ending event might happen. But barring that, which I personally don't think is super, super likely, like I am a genuine optimist. So whether it's whether it's by the time this president finishes their term or the next, I don't know. But yeah, but again, you are talking about the pragmatic realities on the ground that I don't have a super great solution for. I know the taxation group I'm part of, we've hired a lobbyist before. I don't know much about how that went.
So then you got involved in politics, and then you say, "Oh, we're already in hell. There's no fear of hell."
Yeah.
So yeah, the way I see this before I go to Denise, and we're almost out of time, and I want to respect your time too, Max, and everybody else, anybody who needs to drop, obviously, definitely save the chat. There's some great links and some questions in the chat. At one quick comment, and we'll go to Denise. But yeah, the way I see this, Max, is just that change takes slowly, and if you get like some of the Democratic clubs and even like the political national conventions on board with some of these ideas, they can promote up leaders that already buy into this. So as they become elected officials, they can be sympathetic to civic assemblies. They might even form, committees that again may not be completely random at first, but more and more committees. Something that Jeremy and I in our discussion groups, kind of talked about was like, at least having bipartisan committees on a lot of these issues. So every time the administration changes hands, all these rules and policies and discussion doesn't just end and start over. You already have this group of committed people that are coming up with real solutions for real problems, and it doesn't have to flip-flop every time the administration changes on the state, city, state, or federal level. And I think civic assemblies could certainly be incorporated into that model and be a big part of it. So again, so hopefully you're I mean, it sounds like you're casting your net wide, but definitely getting involved in a lot of the political party groups to try to sell this idea. And as they start looking for candidates to run for offices, and we're talking every office, city council, school boards, state, city, local politicians, getting them on board. And as they get into office, then they're going to be more likely to promote this, at least on a small scale, and then it might eventually grow. And they can certainly push some of this stuff forward. That's kind of like what I was thinking. So yeah, this is awesome. So Denise, hit us home. Hit us home.
I was just wondering what the topic was at the meeting they had for the LA fires.
The topic was the official language. I guess I could try to pull up, but it was dealing with how should Los Angeles rebuild in the aftermath of the fires in a sustainable, community-centric way.
Very cool.
And then what happened was we had 40 participants. That's all the room allowed for. And then there were a number of observers, including some officials from Culver City. And then we were presented a bunch of information from some experts. We had she was an expert on vegetation and fires and how they spread. Stephanie, I forget what her credentials were. Then we had a representative from Abundant Housing talking about the housing crisis going on in Los Angeles and how we can sort of use gentle diversity to build. And then we had another presentation from a state senator's office. One of his aides from his office told us about a lot of relevant bills going on. I mean, it was a lot of information. It was not, you weren't able to really process it in that 3 hours or in those, or you heard their talks. So it was rushed, but the general outline of what is going on was conveyed. And then we broke into the 40, we broke into 10 groups of 4, where each person was given a couple minutes to share their personal experience about the fires and their initial impressions and thoughts about the presentations we heard and possible remedies. And then we sort of skipped ahead, and this is something that PDLA we had already come up with our 4 policy proposals, whereas you'd really want that to come from the deliberation of the people. We just supplied those to expedite the process. Each group was given a policy proposal and then asked to spend like 40 minutes in your small group, again, trying to make sure everyone was heard from and everyone to talk about pros and cons, social pros, financial pros and cons, logistical pros and cons, and then another sort of section on this. Everyone was given a giant poster and another section of like questions, like what other information do you need to know? And then we would take, there was a moment where 2 people from each group then rotated to go to another group. And then we had another discussion session where you now had 2 new members in the group. The group would then sort of relay what they had thought about the issue to the new members. The new members would give their new opinion on this slightly different, well, it could be a significantly different policy proposal. And then after all of the discussion was done, we went through an exercise where everyone went around the room and was given like a bunch of stickers, and you could go up to each policy proposal, see on the board all of the things people had written for pros and cons, social, financial, logistical, and their questions. And in some groups, then we were encouraged to do this as well. Like if the group decided to edit the language of a proposal, they could do that if they wanted to. And then the people with stickers, you could go around onto each and put a sticker on this other section that indicated, do you love this policy proposal? Could you live with this policy proposal? Not sure, you need more information, or you're just anti this proposal. And you know, different proposals had a different distribution, and everybody said that they learned something that day. Not too many people said they had changed their opinions. But if you ask me, if you like learned something, maybe by implication that means your opinion was slightly changed. And so yeah, I thought it was a great event. I was one of each group of 4 had a facilitator to make sure each person got their chance to speak. I did that. That was hard for me not to jump in and start arguing, but yep.
That's cool. Thanks.
That was the event.
Thanks for the rundown, Max. That kind of reminds me of something. There's at least 1 or 2 individuals way back in the day, like even pre-COVID, that were working on some software applications that kind of modeled this a little bit, where somebody would present a topic, present a solution, and then people could comment on the solution, and then people would vote up different people's comments. So instead of having a long deliberation in meetings and rooms and all that, people could more casually, jump on when they had a few minutes, read over a couple lines, vote up solutions, and that's a way of kind of distributing the time and not having this, cumbersome, 3-hour meeting. So there could be some potential software solutions that could potentially help facilitate some of these things. So very cool, very cool. So yeah, well, hey, stay in touch with us. I just wanted to, we are at the 3 o'clock time. Wanted to respect everybody's time. One more final thank you to Max and his team here. We got Ian and Alex and Paul and some others that joined us. Max's mom, Rebecca, thanks for coming. And yeah, this is great. Definitely stay in touch. I mean, we'll try to, we'll definitely be an advocate for you. In addition to promoting Braver Angels, I'm going to add that to my list as promoting Civic Assemblies as well. I think this is a great idea. And I shared a lot of the, cynicism about politics that you did. So I'm with you. I'm with you on a lot of this stuff.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time and everyone showing up.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next month.
Okay.
We'll be in
Thank
touch.
you all.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.
Save the chat if you didn't already. I put a few links in there myself. Thanks, Don. Thanks for the comments. Thanks, Denise. Madeline, Larry, thank you. We didn't have a quorum today. I don't think we had, or maybe almost. We had, yeah, we do have, yeah, how many do we have on our board?
We have well, no, not 8.
Yeah. Okay, so we did have a quorum. Yeah, between me, you,
missing
Madeline, oh, and
3,
Meryl.
so
Well,
we
Meryl
did
was
have-
there at the beginning. She dropped off. Yeah. So only Nina and Steph were gone. Thanks, Rebecca. Bye.
Take care now. Bye.
Let's see. Save the chat one more time. She's probably trying. Are you trying to figure out how to get out of the meeting? Sometimes it's not easy to close it. You're on mute. Go ahead and unmute if you need some help.
How do I save the chat?
Oh yeah. Oh, good question. In the chat window.
Go to chat.
Yeah, there's the 3 dots, and mine is in the top corner under more. The 3 little dot, the horizontal dots.
Yes.
Click on more and
And then
save
it
chat.
says save chat, and then click on save chat.
Did you find it?
Under view?
No,
No,
you're,
under
you know,
chat.
in the chat. Yeah, in the chat window itself. Right at the title where it says HAOC June 9th Civic Assemblies, there's 3 dots right next to that, at least for mine. And I click on those 3 dots to look at some more menu options, and it says save chat.
Oh, here I see more. More. Return to settings, captions, request captions.
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, so do you have the chat window open right now? You can see all the last remark by Alex saying thanks, Max.
No, I think I erased it by mistake.
Oh no, you can't erase it. Just so
Oh.
click on the chat window. So so open the
But
chat back
it's
up.
not showing anymore.
Yeah, you have to open it back up. So on the bottom menu items, there's like
Audio,
participants,
video,
chat.
participants, chat.
Yeah, open up the chat window again.
Got it. Chat.
Yeah, click
Now, in the
chat.
chat, in the very top where it says HAOC June 8th, there's 3 dots. If you keep following along, there's like 3 dots after Civic Assemblies. Do you see those?
In the chat window. A little box.
I do not see 3 dots.
Do you see the title where it says HAOC June 8th Civic Assemblies? It's the title of the chat window.
No, at the top it just says meeting chat. And then it starts
Ah.
Yeah,
Wendy
and then below
Holmes.
that,
Oh, you know what?
Says-
Let me do. Let me show you. Oh, I just thought of this. Oh, you know what? Can I do that? I'm not sure. Let me see if I can share my screen and actually
yeah, share your screen
share.
with it.
I didn't even think of that. Let me see which one is it
You might have to
sharing
drag
now?
the chat window in there.
Yeah. So am I sharing, Jeremy? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, you are. You're sharing. I just see your desktop.
Okay. Yeah. So now let me. Oh yeah. Yeah. So here's the. See if this is different now that I'm sharing, but if I open up the chat window, do you see the chat window that I shared here on the screen?
No, we don't.
Oh, you don't see it? Oh my gosh, it doesn't show. It's probably hiding Zoom controls. Oh, that is so stupid. I mean, I can see sometimes you don't want to do that, but in this case,
Well,
we do.
that's
Yeah.
okay. I think I can get it from Max.
Yeah. If anybody else in the
probably
group,
saved
or
it.
yeah, you could always send us an email and I could send. Yeah. Go through
I'll get it from
Max,
him.
and if Max doesn't have it, I can send him the chat if he forgot to save it. So yeah,
Okay.
Zoom
Thank you so
can be a
much.
little
You were
tricky. You're
terrific.
welcome. Thank
You were
you.
really
Okay,
Thank you,
good.
thank you,
Rebecca.
Rebecca. You take care.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, bye
Bye
now.
now. Let's see. Stop sharing. There we go. And I wonder if there's sometimes the chat is also in the bottom of the thing, so depending on what version you're in. So did you figure out how to exit, Rebecca?
It's still working, but that's okay. I'll sign off.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. There she
Okay,
is.
okay, yeah. It's like trying to be helpful in tech support. Yeah, it looks like she said she read it and it just looked very different. So it's possible that there was hey, give me a quick second. I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, cool.